Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is the Senator from the 14th, and this is Trump Afternoon Tea. Trump Afternoon Tea, an official subsidiary and affiliate of Trump Morning News, your number one leader in Trump news entertainment. Today in Trump Afternoon Tea, everybody in the federal government seems to either be fired or resigning. Last week, over 10,000 federal employees were fired. The legality of many of these firings still in question because of civil service protections. Just to review a couple of the firings, hundreds of Federal Aviation Administration employees were fired. The claim by the administration was that these were probationary employees, but whatever AI search technology the administration used to identify probationary employees also accidentally included probationary promotions, meaning people who were promoted to higher levels of responsibility who may not be legally able to be fired. As you know and are very well aware, we have had a couple aviation accidents and disasters in the last few weeks that are calling the public's attention squarely to aviation safety and an industry that engineers are hard to find in regardless. 300 staff were recently fired from the National Nuclear Security Administration, or NNSA, the agency responsible for building and maintaining and overseeing our nuclear stockpiles. Reports are that congresspeople intervened personally, privately behind the scenes to explain to Elon Musk what the National Nuclear Security Administration does, and as a result, Musk and his team tried to reverse the vast majority of those firings so that anybody would be overseeing our nuclear stockpiles. As you know, our correspondent from the 44th covered the CDC firings of 1,300 staff, some of whom included disease detectors responsible for responding to outbreaks. Now, of course, Elon Musk, our co-president, is looking for more opportunities to take a hatchet to the entire federal government, including alleging, I apologize to the senator from the 50th for that terminology. That was offensive. They have looked for other ways to take an axe to the federal government, including to look at the Social Security Administration, misread the data, and assume wrongly that millions of 150-year-old people are wrongfully receiving Social Security benefits. Of course, this is the predictable narrative framing that will come in advance of attempts to cut Social Security and Medicare, notwithstanding campaign promises. But of course, some federal officials resigned. You may be familiar with the New York case of Eric Adams, current New York mayor, who was caught receiving and sending text messages with Turkish officials to accept gifts totaling over $100,000 in value in exchange for allowing the Turkish government to establish a consulate in New York City. This is, to say the least, against federal law. The Southern District of New York had been engaged in an indictment, a prosecution of Eric Adams, that has recently been moved to be dismissed. Why? Because New York prosecutors, including Danielle Sassoon and Hagen Scotton, some of the best luminaries of the Southern District of New York office, and also both personally conservatives, refused to dismiss the indictment at the direction of top DOJ officials in a plainly partisan and political exchange between President Trump and Eric Adams, who sought his favor. In the course of these events, Trump Deputy Emil Bove locked DOJ attorneys in a room for an hour and said, if you cannot pick the person who's going to dismiss the Eric Adams indictment, all of you are fired. They had a conversation. One senior attorney agreed to do it, but then backed out, and Emil Bove, the second in command at DOJ, had to sign the filing himself because DOJ attorneys were committed to DOJ independence and the rule of law. Just today, there's reporting that a D.C. prosecutor resigned their position instead of carrying out an order to investigate a government contractee criminally and to seize their assets. Here with critical commentary on today's news, our special guest, the Senator from the 14th. Senator from the 14th. So to be very clear, very clear, the New York mayor, whose deputies are resigning en masse, the deputy mayors, because of how corrupt the New York mayor is and how obvious his exchange, his deal was with President Trump, his indictment may be dismissed because he spent the last few weeks and months kissing Trump you-know-what. This is not a democracy that adheres to the rule of law if you have to go kiss the ring of the sovereign, the strong man, in order to get selective political favor in the criminal process. And I want to be clear that you heard me on the D.C. prosecutor resigning. There is now a directive within DOJ to find somebody who's an opponent to criminally investigate and seize their assets. Okay? Now, I could go into, I don't have much time left, I could go into Brian Kemp, the governor of this state, rolling over and kind of doing his normal dance of sucking up or standing up to Trump, depending on the day, neither of which really works. But when he said that sometimes government should be, quote, right-sized, he's talking about 1,300 CDC employees, vast majority of whom are Georgians, who are doing God's work in protecting against some of the worst natural disasters that can happen. Do we remember that 5 years ago COVID happened and is still happening in some regard? Well, that's all the time we have for Trump Afternoon Tea. As always, colleagues, we remind you, you're just state legislators. There's nothing you can do directly about this, and there's nothing the Republican Party could have done in the last 20 years to prevent this from happening. Join us next time on Trump Morning News. Thanks, Mr. President.